Hello and welcome back to another episode on the Motherhood Video Series channel. I'm Ashley, I'm your host. I am a motherhood guide and postpartum doula, and I'm really passionate about connecting with wonderful experts and specialists in the area of pregnancy, motherhood, and looking after a newborn. Today I got to sit down with Heidi from The Nest. She's a paediatric nurse with over 20 years of experience from the UK who lives here in Australia in Sydney. And we were talking about allergies and how you can reduce your baby's chance of having allergies while you're pregnant, as well as when you're introducing foods to your baby as your baby grows and is ready to start eating solids. We talk about what allergy foods are, what allergies are, what symptoms you can look for in your child. And then we touch base on some CPR and how you can kind of perform CPR if your baby needs that. This episode is jam-packed with heaps of information. I'm really excited to be doing this one and bringing this to you because I know that so many mums are really concerned with, allergies and how popular it is and how common it is. So we want to make sure that your babies are safe. So if your baby does have an allergy, you know the signs to look for as well. So sit back, as I always say, sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea, grab some water, relax, listen to this video series, listen, watch, whatever you want to do, and let me know how you find it. And if you would like some extra experts to come on, if you have a specific topic you would like me to cover, please just send me an email. My email is hello@themotherhoodcircle.com.au. Please share this episode with your friends, family, and anyone who's pregnant or just had a baby. Share the love, and I will be bringing this episode on now. Hi Heidi, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really excited because you're going to be talking about something that's really important, CPR, and also allergies in pregnancy, and also once baby's born and we start introducing solids. So a big warm welcome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Whereabouts are you based?
I'm based in Sydney.
Sure.
And so the Nest at the moment is based in Sydney, but very, very soon it's going to be more in South Sydney as well, but also we're looking at Canberra and the Central Coast.
Oh, awesome. Mm-hmm. And you'll be spreading out and then getting bigger. Yep. And you can you also do consults with people online, or is it all physical?
Yeah, so we do have once a month we have a live online class that people can book into. Obviously it's very different to the face-to-face, but probably just really from the mannequin point of view that you can't actually physically practice with the mannequin, but we still get a really good description of how to perform the choking and CPR.
Awesome.
But we're also looking at joining a program to build an online kind of a course, if you like, that people can just sort of buy into and have for reference for, and have access to it forever.
Oh, well, I'm a big online course advocate, as I have 2 online programs myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I got a little bit into what you do before we actually talk about some of the stuff you do. So tell us a little bit about how you support women in pregnancy and after they've had their babies, and start off with the CPR or the allergies, wherever you want to take this conversation. Let's go.
Okay, so I started the Nest from really a strong entrepreneurial urge, being a registered paediatric nurse for nearly 20 years now. I just had a really strong entrepreneurial urge that I wanted to do something of my own, and that I wanted to use my skills that I already have, which obviously along the lines of paediatric nursing, but also the last 4 years I'm a clinical nurse specialist in childhood allergy. And I actually still am part of the team 2 days a week at Sydney Children's Hospital. And this is great because they're so fully supportive of the nest, of the thing I do privately. And also that's where I keep up with the latest skills and the research that we do. I'm involved in research there as well. So what the nest came about from a couple of things really. Number one, a 6-month-old fully choking in the middle of Glebe Park on me just about over a year ago. And the mum just was doing a good job trying to, do some back blows, but I basically dived in to help the little one. And we got it up and she was fine, but she basically, at the beginning, she wasn't breathing. She was completely grey and it was a complete blockage. So, and the one thing that stuck with me was that mum was like, I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. And I'm like, if I had a penny for every time I heard that, when, you don't need these skills until you really need them and it's literally on top of you. And I just feel like it was something there was a bit of a gap there, but also with the allergy, the way that I specialised in allergy as well, this is a massive issue in Australia at the moment. Australia is the worst country in the world for allergies, for childhood allergy. And it's almost an epidemic, I suppose you could call it, and it's so misunderstood, and there's so much myth and legend around it that I decided to basically mix the two. So we do classes for parents and caregivers for first aid, CPR, and allergy management and prevention. I call it because it can either be last week and this week with that have chosen to empower themselves with how do I introduce these foods to my child, how do I spot an allergic reaction. But on the other hand, we might see a family whose child already has diagnosed food allergies, and we support them in that and just basically teach them how to keep themselves safe, answer all their questions. There's millions of questions. Otherwise, where else are they going to go? They can go back and see their specialist who you pay $500 a pop for, who are brilliant, and all my friends are allergy specialist doctors, but it's pricey to go and ask a few questions. They can go online, but it's not then about their child and their specific worries. So that's what we're here for. And as far as I know, we're the only education company in Australia who deal with specific childhood food allergy as well as first aid and CPR. I think, so we do classes in people's homes and we also do them in public venues. So if there's just one or two of you, you can book into a public venue, or if you want one in your home, we travel to your home as well. And we're this close to breaking into the hospitals. So once we get there, then obviously our information can get to a much wider audience as well.
So what sort of tips and advice would you give to pregnant women now who are watching this and they're thinking, oh, I don't want my children to have allergies, I'm really concerned. What sort of, what can they do now to, you were talking about preventative measures. Is there something in pregnancy we can do?
Yes, eat everything.
Yeah.
Don't avoid anything. Even if a healthcare professional tells you to avoid, don't avoid
even
anything.
Those foods that could have bacteria, like the deli and all that? Yeah,
so that's the only thing that obviously you should, but that's nothing to do with allergies. So the soft cheeses, the shellfish and things like that we're always to avoid them. I myself avoided them in pregnancy because that's to do with bacteria, listeria, botulism, all those kind of things. But from an allergy point of view, don't avoid anything from an allergy. So eat all your nuts, eat peanut, obviously, and I'm assuming you're not allergic.
Yeah, no, tell me, because I don't know anything about allergies. So pretend I don't even pretend because I don't know anything. So just treat me like you got to tell me everything.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be eating a lot of certain types of shellfish anyway because of those issues with virus and illness. But things like fish, just normal fish, soy, wheat, peanuts, eggs. Don't avoid anything that's in your normal diet. You don't need to go crazy with things that aren't necessarily normally in your diet, but you definitely need exposure. Everything you have is going to come through into your amniotic fluid, and that actually they found that I think babies can actually taste certain foods in amniotic fluid. So just don't avoid anything. It's all to do with exposure. An allergic reaction is an immune system overreaction. So the more we can gently introduce these things to your baby's system, the better. And it's all about, we've actually proven that early introduction is the way forward to prevent allergies.
And that is very different from what they were saying beforehand, right? Which is, can you tell us a little bit about what was happening before, in case people are still thinking that old way?
Yeah, it was quite common for people to be told to avoid peanuts in pregnancy, and to avoid other types of tree nuts, not necessarily other foods, but it was just, and this is what we're fighting against now, is that the medical profession, i.e. us, was telling people, a decade or so ago, which is still relatively recent when you think that, grandmothers, or if you're pregnant, your mum, that would have been the advice that they were hearing not that long ago. So it was thought that maybe, exposure to these kind of things would increase your child's risk of allergy. And actually, we now know that is completely wrong. There's a blog post on my website called Australian Mums Are So Confused About Allergy, and it goes into some of the studies. I've not gone too technical about the studies, but just it's so plain to see where we went wrong and maybe where that rise in allergy has come from.
That's interesting. It's really interesting. I ate everything because I never got any advice not to. Of course, I stayed away from the delis and that sort of thing. And then I was eating peanut butter and, all the things anyways. I was like, whatever anyways. And neither of my children have allergies. I don't have any allergies because I'm pretty sure my mum, I don't know much about allergies, but my mum ate everything. So when you said this to me, and, we were talking about this before we went for this interview, I was like, wow, maybe there is a lot about that, maybe that is a huge reason as to what's happening, because I did remember the advice not to eat certain foods, and I was like, wow, that's crazy.
So when the kind of our older generation, so say our parents' age, sorry, just a second.
That's all right. We're the motherhood circle, so we're all mothers here.
I know, I couldn't find the childcare. When our parents' generation say, there was no such thing as all these allergies in my time, they're right, because there wasn't. The rise in childhood allergy is astronomical in the last decade, and it is 1 in 10 under 1-year-olds now has a diagnosed food allergy.
Wow.
So, and it wasn't the case 15, 20, 30 years ago. It wasn't the case. It was maybe one person in the school that had that allergy.
Okay. So now when we make sure we eat all the food groups, make sure we eat the peanuts and all that sort of thing in pregnancy, what about if we've already had our babies, or we're out of pregnancy and our babies are born and we're looking at introducing foods? What do we do in that situation when we start introducing foods?
So the foods that you ate during pregnancy, if you choose to breastfeed, then definitely carry on eating those foods. Some of the foods will come through your breast milk as well, just the same way as your baby was exposed to them in the womb. So it's fine to continue with eating what you're having if you are breastfeeding. But with early introduction, so we call it early introduction of common allergenic foods, and I've realised that it's a bit of a confusing name, because people think what we're asking is to introduce it really earlier than the other foods, and that isn't the case. What we mean is just introduce the top 9 allergy foods at the same time as when your baby starts to eat. But we need, ideally, research has shown that those top 9 allergenic foods should be introduced by the age of 1. So basically, there's a few different ways you can do it. There's no specific way to introduce these foods, but around about 6 months, but not before 4 months. Some children are just ready to eat earlier. Whenever your child is ready to eat, remember, they've got to be able to sit up well and good head control and show interest. So around about 6 months, when they're ready to eat, you can just start introducing these foods. So it's like peanuts, tree nuts, sesame, soy, wheat, cow's milk in the form of yogurts, cheese, that kind of thing. Eggs, did I say eggs? Shellfish and normal fish, like whitefish.
What's shellfish? What's shellfish?
So prawns, lobster, crab, any of those things.
Sure.
Is absolutely fine. Obviously well cooked at that age. But they're the top 9 allergens. They're the ones that you see in bold in ingredients list on the back of food. So they have to be declared on the back of foods. So those foods need to be introduced before the age of 1, because the studies have shown that that is vastly decreasing the rate of food allergy in children. So we know that early introduction, basically your immune system is saying, oh, okay, that's normal because it's coming in really early with everything else. Whereas if we wait 2 years, it's like, well, you know, what's that? Why, you know, and then it overreacts, which causes the allergic reaction. So I'm not saying that by eating all these foods in pregnancy and breastfeeding and eating these foods and introducing these foods is going to stop your child having an allergic reaction. Obviously, there's always going to be children that are allergic, and we don't know with who these children are until it happens, but we know that this does decrease the rate of allergy for sure.
So if they're doing all these things, the mothers are doing all these things with their babies, and then they have a reaction, how will they know what a reaction is, and how do they know what are the symptoms they should be looking for, and what should they be doing?
So the symptoms of an allergic reaction are basically like hives and welts, which can be anywhere on the body. So watch for your child scratching, because they're normally obviously quite itchy. They don't necessarily only come on the face when you first start eating things. What I will say is that lots of children get a redness around their mouth when they start eating some new food. Some children do. And if it's just redness and it's just around the mouth, that's different. That's just what we call contact reaction. That can be quite normal. We would just push on. But if it's hives, if it's raised, bumps, then that's different. That does sound like an allergic reaction. It may only be a mild one though. Swelling of the lips, face and eyes. Tingling in the mouth, so a baby might sort of pull its tongue, and abdominal pain and vomiting. So they are signs of a mild to moderate allergic reaction. Those symptoms can be dealt with some antihistamine, you know, but remember that antihistamine is really just a comfort measure. It's not going to fix an allergy. The child still needs to be seen by someone. The severe signs of anaphylaxis would be difficult and noisy breathing, swelling of the tongue, which actually we don't see that often, swelling or tightness in the throat. So a young child might sort of pull at their throat, grab at their throat, a wheeze or a persistent cough. And actually the persistent cough is probably the most common symptom that we see. And it often then leads to a wheeze. And it's not a big hacking cough. It's just a kind of a normal cough, as if a bit of water's gone down the wrong way, but it just keeps going and it just doesn't go away. Difficulty talking or a change in the voice. The voice can either go quite hoarse or just a change in the voice. And if that's a young baby who's like 6 months old, then the cry will sound different, and that's constriction of the voice box. An older child might say they're dizzy or collapse, and a young child will go pale and floppy, and that's the blood pressure dropping. So in any of these symptoms, any one of these symptoms, we call an ambulance.
Sure.
If you happen to have an EpiPen, this is when you give the EpiPen. And just know that antihistamine is not going to help any of those symptoms. A severe allergic reaction will not respond to a severe allergic reaction doesn't respond to antihistamine. In fact, they've found that it's actually detrimental because it masks some of the symptoms, and it kind of lets anaphylaxis silently take hold on the organs.
Okay, that makes sense. So any of those severe symptoms that you're talking about, call the ambulance, get to the hospital, get the support you need. If it's the mild stuff, you know, some of the mild things that you were talking about, they can start monitor that, but they need to see someone. So who would they need to go see to then get diagnosed?
So you could, your first port of call could be either your GP, or you could go straight to a specialist. The thing with, so for instance, some hospitals will not take GP referrals because they're just swamped by them, and they have to get a specialist referral. But some hospitals do. Mm-hmm. So, and especially in Sydney, it's very different. So I would say your first port of call would be your GP. And if it is hives and it's with introduction of food, if the GP doesn't refer you, I would then go to see a paediatrician or a private immunologist. Okay. If you're going to pay for a specialist, you may as well just go straight for an immunologist, but make sure it's a paediatric allergist, not an adult allergist.
Okay.
They're very different.
That makes sense. I always think it's best to go to the specialist because they specialize in that. So I always refer to, my mothers to see specialists, and people who actually work in that field day in, day out. I remember myself, this is totally different, but I have psoriasis, which is a skin autoimmune disease, an autoimmune skin disease. And I saw a GP for a whole year trying to work out whether it was a fungal issue and doing all these tests. And I had to pay to see the GP, by the way. I went to one skin specialist appointment. He's like, "You've got psoriasis." I was like, "Thank you." Like, what the hell? I went for a whole year to this crazy GP who was cutting me, and which is why now it's all about specialists, people who are passionate like yourself in the field, that know everything, spending all your time researching and dealing with.
And it's one visit, and then you're in, you know. You keep going back and forth. The public systems in Sydney, some of the wait times are a bit much, some aren't, but the public systems are generally very good for allergy services, as in the calibre of the specialists and the allergy nurses and stuff.
Well, that's good to know. Awesome. So that's the allergy side of things. Let's talk a bit about your CPR. What mothers can do in, you know, if they're starting to introduce their babies, or even, it doesn't have to be a CPR food issue, does it? It could be, you know, while they're babies, or saliva or vomit or something like that, couldn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, babies can choke on all sorts of things, especially if they have an older sibling with toys around. So choking seems to be the top worry, and we teach choking in the classes. And there's basically, I always try and keep things really simple. I'm a very simple creature myself. Like, I'm someone who learns by doing. I'm not a textbook nerd. I'm not good at sitting in front of people just talking at me. So I like to just, when I go through the anaphylaxis action plan either, I basically focus on the one box where the anaphylaxis symptoms are. I'm like, at the end of the day, that's what matters. I can tell you all this other gump that's on it, but actually, really, that's what matters. That's what you need to know. So with choking, there's two things that you do with a child that's choking, and that's back slaps and chest thrusts. And obviously, calling an ambulance would be the first thing, but the back slaps and chest thrusts are what we do. But I always start off by saying that if your child starts to cough and choke, and it's quite obvious that something's gone down the wrong way, then if they have a really good cough, then we need to actually just let them cough and not start slapping them on the back, because your cough is there for a reason. That's what it's there for. The body is very clever, and we need to just let the cough be effective. And then often that will bring up whatever's gone down. But if that cough starts becoming ineffective, or maybe there's some noisy breathing, then we need to start. And by an ineffective cough, it's hard to describe because every child coughs differently, but it's not a strong cough anymore. They're not getting enough air in to be able to get a good breath out. Then that's when we need to call an ambulance first and do the back slaps and the chest thrusts. And we use the heel of our hand here between the shoulder blades, and we give quite a good short, sharp back slap, and then we twist with the baby over our lap, sort of facing slightly down the way, supporting the head. And then we turn the baby around to have a look in the mouth between each of the 5 back slaps. If they don't work, because any back slap could dislodge it could be sitting inside the child's mouth. And then we give them another one and they inhale it again. So we need to constantly check. And then if the 5 back slaps don't work, we turn them over and we do chest thrusts. And for an infant, we're just using 2 fingers on the chest, but in between the nipples, and we don't take the fingers away from the chest. We don't do a run up. We just put them on there, and it's a short, sharp press down to try and blow the air out of the lungs to pop out whatever's in there. And again, constantly keeping an eye on the mouth to see if there's anything in there. If at any time there's something in there that we think that we can easily get with our pincher fingers, that's really obvious that we don't think we're going to push it further down and we can get it, we can go in there and try and pull something out. But finger sweeping is not really ideal, because if we push something further down, then we've got more trouble. So the 5 chest thrusts, and this is all if they're still breathing. And then if that doesn't work, we go back to the back slaps, bearing in mind that the ambulance is on its way. So back slaps and chest thrusts. And then if they stop breathing completely, we go into CPR. And that's across the board for any reason. If a child is not breathing, straight to CPR. We don't check for circulation anymore. Okay, that's interesting to know. It's so important to have that skill. I
personally did I ran a family daycare, and part of the registration to have a family daycare is to do the child or infant CPR, which makes total sense because, you know, we need to know how to look after our children. And I remember when one of the children was starting solids, he was a late bloomer. He was a preemie baby and he'd been sick. And so he started solids around 11 months old, but he was just eating purees and he was vomiting. He was choking and vomiting, but it was nothing like I'd ever seen because all children are so different. So my children would make it quite loud and he was like a silent child, but you can see. So keeping in mind that you have to watch your children too, listening is good, but also watching. And so I realized he was choking. And then with my training, I was able to pick him up and put him and then do the whole back thing fixed. And I did that a couple of times with my children because they were little piggies. And they, you know, I did the baby-led weaning, so they were eating bigger pieces. But yeah, just a couple of things on the back. And it made me feel so confident as a mum to know that I could look after them. I was ready. I was, you know what I mean? Like I had those skills if I needed to. But also knowing, I remember from my class, is that if you're pushing too hard on the baby's sternum, isn't it? You can break their sternum and break their bones and that, which is why they only recommend the tiny little...
which is the same as CPR with an infant. But however, so that can happen, but a baby's bones are pretty much cartilage until they're about 18 months old, so they're very bendy. So it can happen obviously, but they're a lot bendier than older children.
But in your classes and in any CPR class for that, they'll teach you the kind of pressure and what you should be doing and the position, so you know what you're doing and that sort of thing.
There's a lot of hands-on.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's heaps of information. So I think people know, well, the ladies watching or whoever's watching now knows what to do in pregnancy, what to look out for once they've had their baby. They understand a little bit about what to do with CPR with babies and infants. So what can they do to keep in contact with you, or what's the best way for them to keep in contact with you, or where would you like them to go, or would you like to tell us a little bit more about your classes, or what's the...
So the classes are, you know, they're open to anyone. We actually get a lot of grandparents in our classes as well.
Oh, awesome.
And with allergy families, we get quite a wide range of family members because obviously the child's in contact with a lot, and often there's always a few family members that don't really realise how serious it can be, you know, that a little won't hurt kind of thing. So they come along and I scare them, which I feel like is my duty. But yeah, the classes are usually, for the home class, it has to be 6 people minimum. But yeah, and what with the allergy portion, it's optional. So if people just want the first aid and CPR, that's fine. When you go to the book a class page, you just tick a box to add the allergy portion, and we do it at the end of the class. So it's always the same class, and then the allergy portion is optional. So even if only half of your group say wanted to do the allergy portion, that's fine. We just do all the CPR and first aid first. I have a first aid pocketbook, which is you can sign up with it at the bottom of every page on my website. The website is thenestcpr.com. And yeah, at the bottom of every page, we've got a first aid pocketbook, which is a PDF ebook, really, with all the common ailments, first aid issues that you might come across with a young child.
Is that a freebie or is that a purchase?
Yep. That's a freebie.
Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Okay,
that's
cool.
A freebie, yep. And then we can keep in touch with you as well about classes, and we send out a weekly email with 3 kind of important topics in, and we usually do a mixture of first aid and CPR. And we're also on Instagram and Facebook, and actually I pretty much write my blog posts on Instagram and Facebook. So you'll probably get just as much information about child health and allergies and first aid on my social media as well as my website. Our Instagram and Facebook handles are @thenestcpr, and that's where you can DM me or you can email us through the website.
Awesome, that sounds great. What I'll do is I'll put the links in this so everyone can jump on and get your freebie and jump onto your newsletter, and they can contact you on your social media. Thank you so much for coming on. So much information for everybody. I know so many mums are going to love this one, so thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching another great episode with the Motherhood Circle. Make sure you come and subscribe to this channel so you never ever miss an episode. Come and say hi on Instagram. And give me a like on Facebook, and stay tuned for yet another episode. Thanks, Mama. See you soon.